There is a scene in The Two Towers that Tolkien later singled out as perhaps the most tragic moment in the entire tale, and if there was ever a page he wrote with tears close by, it was this one. It is not a battle. It is not a heroic sacrifice. It is a tiny, human mistake that snaps a fragile thread of mercy and sends a ruined creature back into darkness. Tolkien himself points to it plainly.
For me, perhaps, the most tragic moment in the tale comes in Book 4, Chapter 8, and following, when Sam fails to note the complete change in Gollum's tone and aspect.
And here is the strange part. Peter Jackson's films do not give you this moment the way the book does, not even in the extended cuts. The story gets reshaped, the sympathy gets rerouted, and the quiet turning point becomes something louder and cleaner. The scene itself is simple, almost too small to notice if you are sprinting toward Mount Doom. Frodo and Sam, half dead with exhaustion, sleeping on the stairs of Cirith Ungol. Gollum hovering near them, on the edge of Shelob's lair, on the edge of a decision, on the edge of being Smeagol again for just one breath. Tonight on Fool of a Tube, we are going to walk down those steps slowly. We are going to pull this scene apart, why it crushed Tolkien, what it reveals about Sam, Frodo, and Gollum, and why the films could not or would not let it stand as written. Tolkien describes Frodo's arc as a gradual education in serving the unlovable and recognizing damaged good in the corrupt. Frodo is the one carrying the apocalypse in his pocket, and you can see it in him. He isn't shrinking, but he is smaller each day because the ring is gnawing pieces off him. The closer he gets to Mordor, the more his kindness turns into recognition. He looks at Gollum and stops seeing a monster. All he sees is a possible future version of himself. Tolkien describes Sam as cocksure and a little conceited, but says Frodo's need and Sam's devotion moderated his conceit and turned pride into a kind of heroism of obedience. Sam is the bodyguard, the witness, the last thread tying Frodo to home. He is fierce, practical, and loyal in a way that is genuinely beautiful. But loyalty has a shadow. When the world becomes dangerous, it is possible for devotion to turn into possessiveness. Tolkien himself says Sam is meant to be lovable and laughable, yet can be very trying, with cocksureness and a readiness to measure and sum up all things from a limited experience. Tolkien insists Gollum is not just a villain, but a torn creature, capable of a real turn toward repentance, and he calls the loss of that turn perhaps the most tragic moment in the tale. Gollum is what happens when the ring wins slowly. He is not a single personality. He is a wound that learned to speak in two voices. Smeagol wants safety, warmth, and someone to look at him like he is still real. Gollum wants the ring back like an addict wants the next hit. Watching those two argue is like watching a conscience get mugged in an alley. And on the stairs of Cirith Ungol, all three collide. Frodo's relationship with Gollum is more pattern recognition than naive optimism. The ring has already started doing to Frodo what it did to Smeagol, isolating him, thinning him, bending every thought toward possession and survival. So when Frodo shows pity, it is because he knows, with terrifying intimacy, what the ring feels like inside your head. That is why he keeps making space for Gollum, even when Sam is practically vibrating with suspicion. Frodo is trying to do something almost impossible in wartime, treat a threat like a damaged person. It is the same principle that haunts the whole story. Mercy is a strategy against evil that spreads by imitation, not just a moral pose. Tolkien makes this explicit in his commentary on the later consequences. He describes Frodo's gradual education to the nobility of service to the unlovable and of perception of damaged good in the corrupt. That line is doing a lot of work. Frodo is learning to serve someone who is hard to love and he is learning to spot the tiny surviving spark in a ruined creature. That requires a certain level of spiritual stamina, but it puts him on a collision course with Sam's love, which is simpler, hotter, and sharper. Sam is the fan favorite because his love is straightforward. He does not philosophize. He shows up, he carries, he cooks when there is food. He stands between Frodo and the dark with a frying pan and a death wish. So it hits different when Tolkien, years later, calmly explains that Sam's loyalty contains an ingredient, probably inevitable, of pride and possessiveness. Not evil, not corrupt. Possessive. The kind of possessive that doesn't say, "You are mine," out loud, but says it with behavior. The kind that can't fully accept that Frodo is becoming someone Sam can't always follow. Tolkien's point is to make Sam undeniably human. Sam's devotion transforms his conceit into something noble, yet it also prevented him from fully understanding the master that he loved. That is the knife in the velvet. Sam loves Frodo so much that he struggles to understand Frodo's mission of mercy, because mercy toward Gollum feels like betrayal of Frodo. Which brings us to the moment Tolkien calls his most tragic. By the time they reach the stairs, Gollum's loyalty is already on borrowed time. He is trying to serve Frodo, but he is doing it under the ring's constant pressure, like trying to hold a candle steady in a storm. He wants Frodo's approval, the way a starving person wants bread. So every suspicion from Sam is a threat to the fragile Smeagol self that is trying to exist. Imagine finally trusting someone again after centuries of being a hunted thing, and then hearing, every day, the same message. You are still filth. You are still a trick. You are still a threat. When Gollum believes Frodo has chosen Sam over him, or that Frodo's mercy has limits, the argument inside him changes tone. Smeagol starts to sound like a creature begging not to be abandoned. Gollum starts to sound like a cornered animal, rehearsing violent solutions. And now imagine the emotional math of leading them to Shelob after that. Not a moustache-twirling, "I am evil" decision, but a broken conclusion. If I cannot be loved, then I will return to what I am good for. This is where Tolkien's version is quietly devastating. He insists there was a moment when this didn't have to happen in the same way. In the book, on the stairs of Cirith Ungol, Frodo falls asleep, exhausted. Sam dozes, half guarding, half dying, and Gollum sits near them in the dark, with his war going on inside him. Tolkien later points directly to this chapter as the emotional cliff edge. He writes,
For me, perhaps the most tragic moment in the tale comes in Book 4, Chapter 8 and following, when Sam fails to note the complete change in Gollum's tone and aspect.
That phrase, tone and aspect, matters. Tolkien is saying Gollum looked different, sounded different. The mask slipped, the monster softened. Then comes the detail that hurts, even though it is so small. Tolkien quotes Gollum in that softened state. "Nothing, nothing," said Gollum softly. "Nice, master." That is the voice of someone who almost remembers how to be a person. In Tolkien's telling of the moment, Gollum reaches toward Frodo with a kind of hesitant affection, a gesture that is not about the ring at all. It is about closeness. It is about belonging. It is about a creature who has been called stinker for so long that a gentle word feels like sunlight. And this is where the tragedy is not a battle, not a death, not a twist. It is an interruption. Sam wakes. Sam sees Gollum close to Frodo, and his love does what love does when it is scared. It becomes a weapon. He reads tenderness as threat. He reacts like a guard dog because he is committed to one job. Protect Frodo from the thing that has been stalking them since the Emin Mill. So he snaps at Gollum, dismisses him, drives him off in disgust. Tolkien's verdict is brutal and tender at the same time.
His repentance is blighted, and all Frodo's pity is, in a sense, wasted. Shelob's lair became inevitable.
Again, repentance is blighted. That is agricultural language, a plant that could have grown, scorched at the root. This is why Tolkien can't face the scene without emotion. It is the specific sadness of watching a soul almost turn around, and then watching it get shoved back onto its worst road by a misunderstanding. And the most painful part is that Sam is not wrong to be afraid. Tolkien even says it plainly.
This is due, of course, to the logic of the story. Sam could hardly have acted differently.
So the tragedy is not Sam is bad. The tragedy is Sam is loving, and loving people can still ruin things by accident. That is a very adult kind of sorrow, the kind you feel after an argument you can't undo, when you realize you were protecting something, and in the act of protecting it, you broke something else. Here is where Tolkien does something rare. He walks you through the alternative timeline himself. He says that if Sam had responded differently, the journey would have shifted to Gollum, with a continuing battle between Gollum's repentance, his new love, and the ring. And Tolkien is not sentimental about it. He does not claim Gollum would become an angel. He says love could not have wrested the mastery from the ring, and that Gollum would still, at some point, have taken the ring. But then he offers the most heartbreaking possibility. Gollum, in some queer, twisted, and pitiable way, might have ended by sacrificing himself, voluntarily casting himself into the fire with the ring as the greatest service to Frodo. So the redemption Tolkien imagines is not clean. It is not a therapy arc. It is a ruined creature seeing clearly for 1 second and choosing one good act that costs him everything. That is why Sam's interruption hurts so much. It removes the possibility of that final, pitiful grace. It forces the story into the harsher version where Gollum still plays his role, but without the dignity of choosing it. If you want a simple summary, Tolkien's version is not Gollum deserves pity. It is pity might have saved the world in a different way, and we missed it by inches. In Peter Jackson's films, this whole moral hinge gets re-engineered. Instead of the quiet, near redemption on the stairs, the film version leans into external drama. Gollum frames Sam over Lembas bread, Frodo sends Sam away, and the audience is pushed into a cleaner emotional alignment. Sam is the loyal hero who gets wronged. Frodo is manipulated. Gollum is actively scheming. That Sam gets sent home, beat, is a major invention for the films. It never happens in the book. Why do this? Because movies are allergic to ambiguity when they are sprinting toward a climax. The book can afford moral nausea. A blockbuster needs the audience emotionally oriented, so the later rescue sequence hits like catharsis instead of complicated regret. The film prioritizes our comfort with Sam over our pity for Gollum. It protects the audience's relationship with the hero we already love. It also simplifies Frodo's compassion, so it reads as being fooled rather than choosing mercy at great personal risk. In other words, the films trade Tolkien's unfaceable sadness for a more familiar kind of tension. Betrayal, separation, reunion. It is effective cinema. It is also a different moral story. And that difference matters because Tolkien's whole argument is that mercy is not decoration. Mercy is the only thing that ever had a chance of breaking the ring's cycle. If you want the real punchline, it is this. Sam is not the villain of the scene. The ring is. The ring turns love into leverage, loyalty into suspicion, and fear into certainty. And Tolkien's safe contains one last quiet insult to our need for clean heroes. Sam eventually reaches pity, Tolkien notes, but too late. That is the tragedy of being decent in a war. You can become merciful 5 minutes after it would have mattered. So when Tolkien says this moment is the most tragic, he is not saying, "Look what the nasty hobbit did." He is saying, "Look how easily goodness can accidentally crush a fragile return to goodness." Or, to put it in Fool of a Tube terms, Middle-earth almost got the soft ending for one scene, and Samwise Gamgee, patron saint of loyalty, accidentally hit skip cutscene. And the worst part is, we understand why. So that is the unfaceable truth of the stairs. Middle-earth loses something because mercy almost happens, and then gets interrupted. Gollum doesn't turn because a sword scares him. He almost turns because a sleeping hobbit treats him like a person, and for a second he believes he can be one. Then Sam wakes, does what love does when it panics, and the moment collapses. The films give us a cleaner drama. The book gives us a quieter tragedy, and Tolkien's heartbreak sits in the gap between them, where a single misunderstanding can shove a soul back into the mud.